Wanna play?
Wanna play? Wanna play? Wanna play? Wanna play?
Wanna play? Hey everybody, welcome back to Wanna Play. My name is James McKenna, and today we're gonna be ranking Evil Dead. Yeah! That's right, with the new release of Evil Dead Rise, we have 5 entries into the franchise now. And so I'm here to stop and rank each and every one. I know this is a little bit late, but I was only just able to watch the new film a week ago, and we already did our live stream review on that, which is on the channel. So if you want to go see that, if you want to see my more in-depth review of the new film Evil Dead Rise, you can go check that out there. But today, for the first time in this channel's history, I somehow have yet to rank this series, so thought what better time to rank it than with the release of the new film. So, without any further ado, it's time to rank the Evil Dead franchise. Coming in last place, now this was a difficult choice because if you've seen any other rankings on YouTube of the Evil Dead franchise, everybody always says that this is one of, if not the most consistent horror franchise ever. So it was really difficult to pick a last place pick, but for me, unfortunately, it is going to have to be Evil Dead Rise. Only, I think, because of how new it is, it's difficult to compare it to the other 4, which are just all 4 legendary horror classics at this point. But this one is still fantastic. Like, if you go into this expecting it to be an Evil Dead movie, that is exactly what you're gonna get. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of crazy kills. We talked about this in our live stream review. The Deadite, the main Deadite, I believe her name is Ellie, the mother, is maybe the most legendary and maybe the best Deadite ever going forward. Like, in 10-20 years from now, Ellie might be recognized as the best Deadite ever put to screen because the performance by the lead actress is just so good. And all the performances in this movie are really good. And as I said, you cannot skip over the kills. I mean, just the opening of the movie sees one of the Deadites literally just rip somebody's scalp clean off. It's insane. Out of nowhere, just boom, scalp is gone. And then you've got, of course, stuff like, you know, whenever they're in the peephole and people are all dying that way. And then I believe at one point, the Ellie Deadite bites somebody's eyeball off and then pukes it into another dude's mouth and then chokes him to death. It's pretty crazy. But the only things that kind of make it not as good is that the story isn't all there, which, I mean, on a surface level, like comparing it to the rest, like Evil Dead 2, for example, doesn't have a story either. But this is kind of the setup that they have for it. It feels like there should be more of a story because it's a mother who becomes a Deadite and then tries killing her children and family. Like, you'd think that there'd be more of a build-up before that and more of like a, you know, more scenes showing the relationship between the mother and the children, but there's not. It's just kind of like, here's the mother, here are the kids, now she's evil. And also the ending Deadite, it's a little bit goofy, but it still is cool seeing him go into like this like wood chipper or whatever it is and having blood literally spray out the sides and cover the entire basement. And I think it's pretty good. It references the originals enough to where you can kind of see how it can be a sequel to the original, but not too much to where it's like overboard. It's shoving it in your face. I think this is a perfect standalone movie, and I also think that this is another perfect entry into the Evil Dead franchise. There's just a little bit of things that I would have done differently, and for that reason, it's gonna have to be number 5. There is actually one more reason why I had Evil Dead Rise in last place, and that's because I just didn't want to have Evil Dead 2 in last place. Evil Dead 2 is a horror classic. It's on pretty much every list of best sequels in horror, and I can see why. It's just so crazy and over the top and insane, and you got all the blood and the crazy performances, and it's truly like, it's so unique. Like, there's absolutely nothing like it. There was nothing like it before, and there hasn't been anything like it since. But for me, it just never really stuck with me as well as it did everybody else. But I still do consider this an absolute classic, because it is objectively, for like, you know, what it did with like special effects and the low budget and the crazy over-the-top performance by Bruce Campbell, it solidifies itself as a horror classic because of all that stuff. And it's just got so many legendary moments and legendary lines. You know, the groovy line when he attaches like a gun to his hand, and that's just his hand. His hand is just a giant shotgun, and it zooms in and he goes, groovy. It's like, that's just stuff of legend right there in horror, and I couldn't bring myself to put it in last place, even though I'd probably rather rewatch Evil Dead Rise. This movie is just such a classic. It's legendary for so many reasons, and I mean, just again, I gotta mention the performance by Bruce Campbell, because he pretty much carries this movie on his own. Like, it's awesome. I mean, I think obviously everybody talks about how the opening 10 minutes just being like a Cliff Notes version of the original. I mean, that's pretty annoying, and it's a little bit of a drag to get through because it is the whole first act of the film. But everything after that is just absolutely legendary, and there's no way I could have had this in last place. Now, these next three might have been the most difficult three picks to come up with in like any ranking list I've ever done, because all three of them realistically deserve to be number one, and if you ask me on different days, they all honestly could be number one. Like this, I guess you can't even call this my official ranking because it's so difficult to decide between these top three, but I guess I'm gonna go with Army of Darkness for number three, simply because it's the only one that's not really an Evil Dead movie per se. Like, that's really the only reason, because I really do like this. So if you look at it objectively instead of how much I enjoy it, it really isn't an Evil Dead movie, because there's barely any blood, if any. I think there's one scene where somebody like falls down a pit and then a bunch of blood sprays out the pit, but that's literally all you get. But still, this movie on its own is still so good. It's so funny. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Just like, it's the only like slapstick comedy movie where that kind of stuff actually made me laugh, because that's not really my type of humor, but the way that Bruce Campbell does it in this movie is legitimately funny. Not every joke lands. I think the whole like the little Ashes running around was kind of dumb, but when you get to like Ash after he gets up the mountain and he's got the scrolls and he's trying to remember the incantation but he forgets, and so he like coughs and pretends that he said it, it's super funny. And then it's literally, it goes to like this medieval, this whole friggin' Avengers Endgame war between these ancient like warriors and an army of skeletons. It's the most ridiculous thing ever, but it's just, it's so funny. It's like, it's Sam Raimi at its best. The only problem is it's not Evil Dead at its best. But still, Bruce Campbell puts in an amazing performance here as Ash, as he always does. And there's just so much good about this movie. The opening credit sequence, I think, is just needlessly epic. This whole thing is great. Just the concept, the delivery, because you didn't really want to have just the same thing again for as you know, Evil Dead 1 and 2. So this was a nice change of pace for like if you're binge watching the series, and this is just, it's a classic. Army of Darkness, I mean, that's really all I need to say. I shouldn't have to explain more, because anybody who's seen this movie besides Ryan knows how good it is. So for me, Army of Darkness is gonna be number 3. Coming in at number 2 is gonna be Evil Dead from 2013. I mean, this movie franchise is just so legendary. You have one of the best original films, you have one of the best sequels, and now you have one of the best remakes. And I guess with Evil Dead Rise, you can say it has one of the best legacy sequels as well. This movie is just unbelievable because it lived up to the Evil Dead name, which is such a tall task to do, especially if you're not going to have Bruce Campbell or Sam Raimi. But they did it through sheer, like, terror. Because that's what this movie is. The other ones try to be more comedic or more, you know, like, oh, here's Bruce fighting some, like, stop-motion demon. But no, this just goes flat out, all out, just demonic, crazy possession, like, blood everywhere. The poster calls it the most terrifying horror movie ever made. And although it's not at that level, it is one of those movies that will make you look away from the screen a good amount of times. It's just such a good remake. It's one of the only remakes that does exactly what a remake is supposed to do, is take the bare bones original concept and make something almost completely different. Like, the original Evil Dead was, you know, it was creepy for its time, and it's one of, you know, it's a legendary, it's a classic movie, but this took that original concept and just, instead of focusing on more of like the humor or the goofiness, it just went full on terrifying demons everywhere. And I think it just excels in, you know, in being what it is, a remake of a classic horror movie. It introduces us to one of the coolest final girls of all time in horror, period. I mean, she literally, like, has to rip her hand off from out of a car, you know, from underneath the car if she wants to survive. And she does. She just rips her hand off, completely just off the bone. It's so good. For what horror movies were at that time, you know, and we had all of these, like, creepy, evil, you know, demon possession films. This is just one of the absolute best of those. It's one of the best remakes. And of course, you can't not talk about the blood. I mean, this has to be the most bloody Evil Dead movie. I'm pretty sure it's a statistic that this movie used more blood than any other movie ever made. Like, there was gallons of it in this movie, and it got to the point where it was literally raining blood by the end of it. Like, literally, they're outside and it's raining blood. This movie is absolutely insane, and it's so great, and for me, it's gotta be number 2. But coming in at number 1 is gonna be the original Evil Dead. I mean, this movie is just incredible. The amount of stuff that it's done for not just the horror genre, but for movies as a whole, because it's Sam Raimi's film debut, so everything that guy has done wouldn't have existed without this original film, and it's such a classic. For such a low budget that they had to work with, they transformed this tiny, you know, cast of literally just friends going up to a cabin and filming a film into just a classic through the work of camera work and character and the character of Ash. Like, that's all he really needed, was just some unique camera work that you hadn't seen before, like, for example, shots like this where it, like, pushes up into Bruce Campbell's face, or of course the legendary opening where it's just a POV shot of just something running through the woods and you just don't know what it is. And the woods themselves are just so creepy, the way that they're shot. And of course, that infamous scene where the woods literally attack the woman, that's just legendary. This movie is stuff of legend. It's one of the most influential movies, honestly, of all time. Like, if you did a top, like, I don't know, for example, top 100 most influential movies of all time, Evil Dead absolutely belongs on there because it just did so much with such a low budget. As I said, the special effects were just incredible for what they had to work with, and just everything about this, just how simple the story was, but how well it was executed, how well it was directed, how well it was shot. It's completely unique. There's nothing like it, and for me, there's absolutely no way that this wasn't going to be number 1, because it's legendary. It's one of the best of all time. So thank you for watching my ranking of the Evil Dead franchise. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and let me know your ranking of the series and your thoughts on the new film, Evil Dead Rise. I'm not exactly sure what my next video is going to be, but I do have planned in the future to do more decade lists with primetime horror, and next, of course, we're going to be doing the 80s, two lists, one on my channel, one on his, And we're also going to be doing, you know, the 90s, 2000s, so on and so forth. And I was thinking of doing some more, you know, collection-based videos. But that's going to be all for today, so I want to thank you all once again very much for watching. Goodbye, and good night. Bang!